Councillor, so I'll be leaving the meeting, so I can't be accused of any prejudice. And Councillor Jim Higginson is taking over. This is Jim, and he'll introduce the case. Thank you.
Right, members, we are on item 5, which is the annual block trading consent for us town centre, and it's on pages 79 to 82 in the pack. And I open it up for comment, please.
If I just quickly go through the report itself. An application was granted by this committee on the 13th of March 2018. You can see the number of pitches that was granted. It is for a block street trading. It has also got the extra condition because at that hearing there were, I think, concerns about road closures. So there is an extra condition with regards to the consent that asks Town Council to notify the licensing section when events other than regular markets are taking place, and also trading is subject to road closures where applicable. A lot of the events, I will say, actually, it isn't on this report, but does come through the Event Safety Advisory Group, that are major events for Town Council. And like I said, the email was received by the licence section on 11th of September from Town Council. Basically, what they want to do is increase the pitches on Twin Square from 2 to 52, and also then to have the car park area for an event. Obviously that would be subject to the car park section sort of agreeing to that as well. So that's basically the main point of this report today. It is the fact because it is a block street trading, and as you can see in 3.4, I won't go into too much because Jan Richards from Town Council is here today. She can sort of go over the events, the type of events, and why is needed for that increase in numbers. It isn't continually throughout the year. It is tend to be ad hoc when it's needed for events as well. So if I pass you over to Jan Richards, and then she can say about the event, and if there's anything you need me to clarify, then I can do so.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm relatively new to the council, so some of you will probably know the history of the market at Christmas in Twin Square better than I do. But after last year's events, we did two things. One is we met as a council to look at feedback and look at what we needed to do differently in the future. And we also conducted a survey, a more broad survey, Future USC, regarding town planning. And from both of those exercises, we appreciated that there were things that we could do to benefit the whole process. The first was in relation to spreading the market more across town. By having Twin Square only as the venue, it did several things. It restricted some of the local businesses in terms of their access to their own properties in the square, because it was bigger than it needed to be for them. But also that we wanted to make it more accessible for more people and to spread the congestion more safely across town, and to have good stewarding and marshalling and traffic management involved as well. In order to achieve that, the person who had been involved in the running of the market, we arranged to meet with him, and in the process we also put in an application for an annual block trading licence, which is what was heard in March and granted in March. Unfortunately, we put some conditions in for anyone who wanted to have a market that was very much about making local businesses more accessible, providing more space for them, some discounts for them, but also for local charities too, because it was felt that people were missing out because there were no discounted opportunities for them. Unfortunately, that didn't sit well with the previous organiser, so in a way, it was by default that it came to us to run the event ourselves. But we did feel, with the knowledge that we'd gained, that we were better positioned to do that. And that is where we're up to at the moment. The difficulty with the application from March is that there was an error in that, in principle, for the number of spaces for Twin Square. That was always intended to be 52. How it became 2, I'm not sure that we know, but certainly when we pulled this out to plan this year, then we discovered that we certainly weren't in a position to manage with 2 pitches. So the first aspect was to make sure that we could increase the numbers in Tewin Square. We've also had some interest in creating what we're calling a Winter Wonderland zone in Maryport Street South car park. You will be aware, I'm sure, that we do have a very popular reindeer parade on a Sunday, and in recent years that's concluded at Sessions House, which is opposite that car parking area, and it's been quite congested and difficult, and the kids are very desperate to see both the reindeers and Santa at that point. So part of our intent for Maryport Street South car park is to provide less of a bottleneck there and to provide more entertainment and activities so that children can enjoy that last part of the market at the end of the day. And we've got quite a lot of interest in traders to join us to do that and set up a grotto area within the car park. So basically those 2 aspects are what I'm here for today, to look at, first of all, making the number for Tewin Square more appropriate to what we would need, and secondly to extend the pitches in Maryport Street South to meet that new arrangement. Okay, quite happy to take any questions if anyone would like to ask any.
Yeah, I call the members. Councillor Guppy and Councillor Evans after.
Yeah, just sort of, have you got any further feedback in view of your application form for the car parking space?
Our clerk, Tracy, has made the application, but she's on leave at the moment, which is why I'm here and she isn't. So I can't tell you what the outcome of that is. What I can tell you is that in terms of people showing interest, the numbers are now getting to the point where without permissions, we're going to have to really rethink the whole thing.
Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask you, is there been any objections to this at all?
No, in fact, the opposite. A lot of interest. We had a meeting the other week and lots of people volunteering to support us. Organisations locally, the farmers market that's always in place, they're keen to have us link with them rather than conflict with what's already happening.
Chair, can I come back in? I think on the going on the track record of USC, I don't see any problems at all.
Yeah, a couple more speakers, and Councillor Pratt and then Councillor Eason.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I just ask, following on from that really, what engagement there has been with local residents before this decision was made on the number of pitches? I mean, I think it's great that you're revitalising the High Street and having this brilliant event, and I think, you know, I certainly would want to support you in any way, but I'd like to know what engagement you've had, please.
Okay. We do have a very active social media platform and the diary and various other things that we do locally, so that anyone who isn't on websites, for example, we make sure we get the information out to them. One of the key issues was the survey that we did. We had a good response to the survey. We had a good 1/3 of our electorate and some of the local businesses and neighbouring councils commented and came back to us, and one of the aspects of that was about events, and a strong thread through that was the popularity of the Christmas festival, but the desire to make it into more of a town event rather than a Tewin Square event. And the idea that we can do that, spread that out, we would need to, of course, put an infrastructure in that suits that, and we have taken the services of an events manager to do that, and we've reached some 20,000 people on the latest look in terms of social media, and we called a meeting, as I say, last week, and we had a good number of people present, about 20, but we also had a lot of people sending in emails asking to be put on lists for volunteering and helping, including Scouts, the Rugby Club, the Women's Institute, the Farmers Market, as I've mentioned. The other thing to add to that is when we first put our post up about a month ago for the market, my job is to process the applications, and I did the 500th yesterday. So, and many of those are local, so it's certainly not just about serving demand from outside. I think there is no doubt I've had nothing but very positive feedback from all of the forums that we've made available to us.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
Councillor Eason.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning.
Good morning.
The two biggest areas of increase are Twin Square and the car park on Mayport Street, 130 extra pitches. You also mentioned park and ride. By taking out these two big areas, where do you expect the cars to park on your park and ride, and how efficient do you think that will work? And also, how will the increase in pitches, should you fill them all up, affect the through traffic in Usk?
Okay. I'll break that into two parts, if I may. The Twin Square one has always been a large number of pitches. The two is wrong. And the first point for today is to correct the error rather than to increase the numbers. That's okay. So that is as is, and that road closure to service that and the reindeer parade is well rehearsed. The issue that we would have is that we've got to be very clear that Bridge Street remains a thoroughfare for traffic passing through. We have, with our experience of the gas pipes recently, had some very good diversions in place, but at the point where you close Twin Square, you've really little option but to keep Bridge Street open. But we have looked at it in great detail. The park and ride, we have made a request to here, to use the car park here. We've also got options where we used last year, I think it's Mr Morgan's yard would be perhaps the nearest I could get to describing it, and we've also now got the rugby club with increased hard standing. So there are options for us for that. We would prefer to stick to one if we could, because we don't want to confuse matters. But we want the park and ride to work for people who can park outside of town and come in, but also then a hop-on facility around town, so that local people aren't necessarily looking to bring cars in to be able to access the different facilities. So we see the spread of space to Market Maryport Street as being crucial in enhancing our traffic management rather than causing any issues. The reindeers come down from Usk Castle. We would be able to have access there for people if we need to, but then they come down. Bridge Street has the normal closure application in, or about to go in, and as I say, that's well rehearsed. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, just one further question. In terms of park and ride, how long would that operate for? Because I see on your presentation, car parks would close 8 a.m. Friday to Monday the 3rd. Obviously, we're not all-night park and ride, but would there be a longer term or a long period during the day to say people having to walk back to here, for example?
Yes, we'll operate the park and ride facility throughout Saturday and Sunday. Friday evening and Monday morning, there's access for local car parking. We're not affecting the car park behind Bridge Street, the Maryport Street North, and we've also got a schedule of traders accessing and leaving pitches during the mornings of both days and the evenings of both days. So we are covering that as well as we can. We have had no issue or requests from people wanting any park and ride facility beyond those 2 full days. But we are looking to trade slightly longer into the evening on Saturday, and to include a switching on of lights event in there as well. And again, that's about having people come into the market, but rather than spend an hour there and then leave, that they move on to another part of town and to other events in town. Okay?
Councillor Lee.
Thank you very much for your presentation so far. I've always been very impressed with the events that happened in Usk over the years, indeed, and how it's grown tremendously. One thing is always concerned me is the traffic management, but you seem to have that very much under control, and I'm very pleased to say I'd like to support what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fine, thank you for that. There's no one else indicated they want to speak. We go to the recommendations. Would someone like to? Oh, sorry.
One thing just to clarify before you go on to the recommendations to the side of it. Basically, this report increases the pitches. It still retains the condition where they have to notify us, just to sort of clarify that as well. And also at the last hearing when it was granted, this will also be retained, is that when pitches book a slot within any event, they are notified of the conditions of the consent itself, so they know what they have to adhere to. So I just wanted to clarify those 2 points. And also in 3.4, The car parks manager doesn't have an issue with it going in there, as is clearly stated within the body of the report. So I just want to give those points to you.
Yeah, Anna, just a final comment to add to that. In terms of the traffic management and the other issues, it does also go to the Event Safety Advisory Group, and that's a partnership with our police fire colleagues, so they obviously have an opportunity to comment on those plans. So they do look at, you know, what your proposals are for evacuation, adverse weather, and be assured that does come to us annually. And I know that colleagues comment on that, on the health and safety aspects, the reindeer coming down from the castle. So as Jan says, it's quite well rehearsed, but obviously traffic will be looked at from our own highways department as well.
Thank you for that, and thank you for your presentation. Members, we go to the recommendations now. Would someone like to? Councillor Evans?
I'd like to move the recommendations.
Second? Yes, right. All in favour, please show. Congratulations.
Thank you
no
very
problem
much.
again.
Much appreciated. We'll see you at the show then. Thank you.
Yes. You're welcome. I don't think we'd be that much longer now anyway, but no, I'd take note of it. And if anyone needs to go, you know, don't worry, just go at whichever time suits you.
Yes.
Yeah, which is why I think it won't last for much longer in terms of time.
Right, we'll go on to item 4 now, the gambling policy and proposals for casinos. And I think Linda is going to lead on this.
Yeah, this report is originally brought before the previous committee prior to consultation, and you can see the flow chart of it in 3.8. The first draft comes to this committee, it goes out to consultation, then the next draft comes here today before actual approval at full council. The report highlights the requirement whether to retain the proposal not to have casinos within the area, and that was mentioned at the last report, which was agreed. The other then was to go out to consultation. We've had a number come back. There was one from Public Health, and also we had a late one, which isn't in this report, which was from the Aneurin and Bevan University Health Board, but it's a mirror image of the Public Health request as well. But I just wanted it noted that we had, for the minutes of this meeting, that it's noted that we had one from Jackie Williams of the Public Health, and also from Dr. Sarah Aitken from the University, Aneurin and Bevan University Health Board. So that's noted on there. So if I go through quickly the changes and how we've changed it in there in 3.7, it was the public health recommendation, which it was farmed out to all the Gwent authorities because we're trying to do it as generic as possible throughout the area. A comment come back from Newport, and we recommend to include the wording in line with the public health, and that wording is in blue on page, it'd be page 53 of your report. which is obviously 38 of the policy itself, but it's 53 of this report. You can see the wording in there. To take into account the public health recommendation. And also you've got recommendation 2, again that's on page 56. Recommendation 3 by public health supported, which is on page 53 again. Recommendation 4 also supported, which is on page 31 of your report. And also recommendation 5 though, which was it's a proviso that all gambling premises clearly promote local and national services, in particular Newport CAB Gambling Support Services and Gamble Aware, albeit they are very good, but there could be new people coming on board, so we couldn't have it, we felt, as a restriction, but put it in guidance documents instead when we send out application forms. And that's for that very reason, that you could have other bodies coming on board, and we didn't want to be restricted to just those 2 named. However, we have got them named in the previous recommendation with regards to training, because we say these people do offer it and there may be others out there, so we can widen the scope of it. So that's basically it today, and is for your initial approval. Obviously it has to be, both elements has to be approved by full council, but we feel it's always better to bring it back here so you'll know what's been going on behind the scenes before it goes to full council, and you clearly can make your recommendations there.
Thank you, Linda. Any comments? Linda, Guffey.
No, just thank you. It makes it a lot easier and quicker sometimes to read the highlighted rather than try and look for it in the much appreciated. Thank you.
I can say when the report goes to full council, it will be in red, not the blue bits, because that's obviously just the tweak. All right, so.
Okay, well, the 2 recommendations. 2.1, to consider whether to retain the current resolution not to issue casino licences within the county of Monmouthshire. Are you all in agreement with that? Please show. Unanimous, thank you. And 2.2, members consider the proposed updated policy statement, and we haven't had many comments, but anyway, are you all in agreement with that? Please show. Thank you. Thank you very much. David Jones is...
Thank you, Chair. It's something that comes annually to this committee. It comes biannually to Strong Communities Select, so apologies for those members that are on that Strong Community Select. I won't dwell on things because it's quite an extensive report. Obviously, happy to take questions. I'll focus on the covering report, because that's obviously the summary. So as I say, the purpose of it is to come on an annual basis, and it's obviously helpful, particularly for officers, obviously, to compare how we're getting on in terms of trends, but also hopefully for members to understand the extent of what we undertake and potentially how that links in when members are considering what we do in terms of tackling vulnerable people, etc. We're always keen as a section to link into those wider agendas, and hopefully the report reflects that. So we're talking about, we have 2 teams in environmental health. Some of them you'll know Hugh Owen. So he has a team currently dealing with some of the travellers in Monmouth, for example. Domestic complaints, noise, etc., which is in the report. We also have a commercial environmental health team led by Jill Dickin. So they're the ones doing the hygiene inspections, health and safety, communicable disease control. Training standards is led by Gareth, and animal health, and licensing, obviously, as you all well know, ably led by my colleague here, Linda. So that's what this report covers. There is also registrars and corporate health and safety within the division, but for the purpose of this, we focus on those 4 teams. The reason it's here is we did have some budget reductions some 3.5 years ago now, and Cabinet at that time under 3.1 did ask to ensure that we just need to monitor that performance so members have some reassurance going forward. The things are still compliant. We're not falling foul of any legislative problems, and also to understand better what the services delivers on a day-to-day basis. So that's why it's here today. And as I say, it goes twice to Strong Communities. It comes once here. There is a difference. It went to Strong Communities in February, as the Chair and Councillor Easton will know. That was obviously a 9-month update, so this is the complete picture for the year, so it is a slight variation on that in terms of populating the figures for the whole year. In terms of the summary, so like I said, I don't intend going through 20 plus pages, but certainly it does get scrutinised closely at Strong Communities. 3 to sort of summarise what happened last year, highlights the following. Those teams I refer to, for the vast majority of services, we are meeting legal obligations upon us. We have a number of governing bodies, as you'll appreciate: Food Standards Agency, Health and Safety Executive, DEFRA in terms of animal health, just a few of Top Med, DWI, the Drinking Water Inspectorate. There's a whole raft of people checking to see that we are legally compliant. So the vast majority, we do comply. In terms of the report itself, hopefully that gives a picture of members of that mix between proactive and reactive work, and I think that's potentially where we struggle, particularly in the summer months, if we're being honest, where people take annual leave. Suddenly that whole proactive element shifts to being reactive, and also obviously it does tend to be seasonal in terms of the domestic team. People having barbecues, they get a bit more fraught and the windows are open, and they're suddenly getting a lot more disturbance in terms of noise and other smoke nuisance, light nuisance, etc. So it does tend to be peaks and troughs through the year. But we do try and focus very much as well on the proactive element, because we think that's very important to residents and businesses alike. In terms of some of the gaps, if we're being honest, for last year, and it is reflected in the report, some slippage in housing visits. We can put that down to our EHO that covers specifically housing. Amy Rees has been on maternity leave. So that has obviously a direct impact. Even though we backfill, it will have an impact in terms of the overall performance of the team. Private water inspections, we've been well aware of, and we are tackling that now in this current year, because we certainly had slippage in terms of getting out and about, in terms of water sources, and obviously remediating problematic areas in terms of private water. Animal health is the other thing, and I'm pleased to report we have got 2 full-time staff covering that currently, and that's a much better picture now for the year 18-19. So we will continue, obviously, reporting annually to this committee, and as I say, also scrutinise the Strong Communities. The next bullet point is just about new statutory duties, and there's all sorts of stuff that gets comes our way. The Public Health Act was probably the most recent. So that's intimate piercings, etc. So we're obviously trying to ensure that we are looking to the future. How do we adjust our work to reflect new duties upon us? And I think the block training consent is an example of that. If we can try and push some of that stuff out, perhaps to our town councils, that's helpful in terms of our capacity. And another success story would be dog fouling. Our complaints to the council has actually dropped, but we know the town councils are certainly picking up schemes, be it the red card in terms of dog fouling, which takes off some of the pressure from our EHOs to pick up that proactive work I referred to earlier. So that's what generally with the sort of way we're trying to go with things. Hopefully, I think members are familiar with what we do in terms of protecting the environment. We deal with all that environmental crime element. We do that dealing with vulnerable people, being in housing, etc. But also the bit that perhaps is forgotten is that safe and level playing field for businesses. So interesting, the smoking ban came in. They just wanted to be fair across the piece. They're all for it, actually. There's a lot of negative publicity nationally. But actually businesses said we're keen to go because it's not fair on our staff that are exposed to all this. So very much what we're about is ensuring that sort of safe level playing field, so all traders are operating from the same base. So we are consistent in our approach. The other thing, obviously, just finally on that item 3 is how we link better with the corporate business plan that's the authority have now signed up for. And also what are the other key drivers, be it national or regional. And the Chief Medical Officer Wales report for last year refers to gambling and health. So as part of that, Linda's team, limited as they are in terms of numbers, not in terms of ability, in terms of their capacity, is just to ensure that they are going out to those betting shops to ensure that they are looking for those problem gamblers and doing something about it. So we will be keen to look at their risk assessments and not accepting that this guy is vulnerable and he's blowing all his cash inappropriately in on machines, etc. So we are looking at that as a priority for this year. So that reflects what the CMO was telling us for 17-18. So the reasons are fairly clearly stated. I don't think, Chair, I'll go through the report. Just in terms of navigation, if people have got questions, Section 1 obviously is what I've just covered and what we're about in terms of a team. Section 3 covers resources, so hopefully that's fairly clear in terms of our full-time equivalent staff. And then 3.2 just tells us we spend, and that's a net number, just under 1.3 million across those services. And obviously that's after we've taken the income in. So that's the total cost of the service. So hopefully people will reflect that that's value for money in terms of trying to stop people getting into difficulties, be it vulnerable people, sorting out the housing, making sure food is safe. So Abergwenny Food Festival, again, we tend to publicise that as an authority. We had 6 members of staff out there on the weekend, making sure that those, I think there's about 270 traders there, are regularly looked at to ensure the last thing we want, obviously in terms of image and reputation of the authority, is something going wrong in such large events. I do touch upon that in the report as well. And I mentioned it earlier, the Event Safety Advisory Group is something that's certainly taking up more time and effort, I think, appropriately. So we are currently liaising with the Abergwenny fireworks display, for example, this time of year, to make sure that's done in a safe manner, and all the other events that are happening. So hogging the bridge, if you're in Caldicot, will be an issue for you guys at the end of the month in terms of those traffic issues, etc., when they roll up with Harley Davidsons on the 28th of September. Not trying to worry you, but just sort of trying to reflect some of the stuff that perhaps isn't immediately apparent in terms of what we do. And then figure 1 covers all those facts and figures. So I won't go through that now, but certainly welcome any questions. We have some narrative then, so I think hopefully members are familiar with the format under section 5, and that talks about, you know, the sheer vastness of what we cover in terms of numbers. I think it's helpful just to reflect sometimes on the sheer numbers of stuff that we deal with. So in Hugh's world, for example, I think most of you know Hugh over the years, 528, the total number of service requests. That's not people complaining about us, that's people complaining about neighbours, etc., complaining about they've had food poisoning, complaining about the taxi they jumped in, etc. Just in Hugh's side of things, they dealt with 1,727 last year alone in terms of complaints, and obviously 1 or 2 of those can take an inordinate amount of time. So there is a real capacity issue there in terms of getting things done within that staff capacity I mentioned earlier. So I think that's it. Like I say, section 5 covers that. The summaries in 6, which I think I've covered anyway. And then the sort of the crystal ball bit, if you like, is section 7, in terms of how do we try and shift that sort of reactive element more to the proactive. So we'll have to sort of, digitisation might help us. You know, can people help themselves more in terms of that noise element, which soaks up a lot of time and effort for us. So we do need to try and think about how we spend our time most appropriately. Income generation is clearly important, and we have certainly improved on that over the years. The legislative requirements, there's a couple of examples there I mentioned earlier, in terms of how we try and link in with those services. And certainly collaborative opportunities is something that's not going away. So if we can do things on a regional basis, then we'll endeavour to do so. And there is obviously memorandums of understanding. So if something serious happens, be it food poisoning or similar, then we do link in with the Torvines and the Blaenau Gwents to pitch in, as we did with the foot and mouth outbreak, if those remember that some years ago. So basically, I think 7.5 is the summary. It's, hopefully members do recognise we are here to protect the vulnerable people, reduce antisocial behaviour, improve the environment, ensuring safe food both from the farm all the way to the fork. Along those lines, obviously, we do react to all those issues, be it members of the public and members themselves. So if we are delivering those statutory duties, we are acting on local intelligence, and we welcome that input from, be it councillors, other stakeholders, close liaison with the police, fire service and others. Currently, maybe it's not just my view, we do enjoy an excellent reputation, and I think that is down to those officers within those teams I refer to. They do go the extra mile, they do work weekends, they are out at night. They're often out at 3 o'clock in the morning listening to a Welsh water pump that someone's complained about. So it is extensive, and hopefully I think that is certainly recognised by the members here. So happy to take questions, Councillor. I think I'll rattle through that in rapid speed. welcome any
Yeah.
questions.
Thank you very much, David, and it's good to see that you underspent by £30,000. Quite a record, that. Right, who's first? Councillor Edwards and then Councillor Pratt.
Just one thing. You did mention the private water supply. I'm just wondering, because we've had a long, dry summer, were there any problems with anybody sort of running out of their private water supply? Because that's an issue then, because the springs and so on, they dry up, don't they? And do they have to, if they become re-established, do they have to have another test and all that sort of thing? And how much do you have to spend on that? And how, is it a problem in the county with private water supply?
Yeah, certainly we were bracing ourselves if the drought had continued. I know Carmarthenshire did have supplies actually run dry. So then, helpfully, Welsh Water pitched in. Also, they got no responsibility for private water supplies, as we know, because they're not paying a Welsh Water bill. But I know that they put in drinking water supplies for those people that literally their springs and boreholes had dried up. We had no incidents, thankfully, so luckily the water arrived. We had a few queries, what's going to happen if, together with Ian Hardman from emergency planning perspective, so we did have a contingency in place. If that happened within Monmouthshire, we'd start certainly taking that on. It is a rechargeable service, so if someone at any time can ask us for to take a sample. There may be there may be issues in terms of it did run fairly low, as you say, in terms of bacteriological quality may be compromised. So I'm sure that those ones that we've obviously local intelligence again. Some are fantastic. That private water supply may be better pressure and quality than Welsh Water. No disrespect to the public supply. So there's many there. There aren't never a problem. Llanover's got a huge private water supply network there. But certainly as and when those problems occur, we can obviously go out and resample and reassure people.
Do you have any sort of registration as to what percentage in the county would be using private water supplies?
And we haven't got a register as such. I mean, the closest you can get is all the residents and take off all the people that pay for Welsh Water. So that's the easy way of doing it. We have about 160 supplies, varying from very large to very small, the 1-2s. But some of the large, like Itten, has quite a large private network. So that might supply 50, 60 houses. Yeah. So we're more interested in the sources than if that makes sense. It's going back to where the problem may be. So they focus very much on the sources, and then obviously we'll sample at source then. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you,
Councillor Pratt.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you for the report. My question's just purely on construction, because obviously my ward is very much I'm being challenged on a daily basis concerning the A465 Heads of the Valley works. And I'm very familiar with people having to have dust monitors put in their house and that type of thing. I'm just wondering, this council is really stretched. How much support financially do the Welsh Government give us as a council to provide these services? I mean, they were exploding in the summer, and I know officers were out down my lane with me at sort of 10:30 at night. So it's putting a lot of pressure on your department. And what financial support are we getting from the Welsh Government whilst these works are carrying on?
That's quite simple, zero. So we did write to them after a Strong Communities Select. I think it was raised about a year ago, probably, wasn't it? Absolutely take your point. In terms of Hugh's time alone, it's been colossal. I think he's had something like 270 plus service requests about it. So that's points of contact, people phoning up. He's going out on site. Exhumations, you name it. It's actually the 465 has been a massive piece of work. The concern now will be the M4 Relief Road, even though it's only touch an area and it's consequential for Newport. We have written in, I know that Hughes reminded them of that letter that went in with that very point, as to if you've got a scheme that's going to cost you £1.4 billion, which the Relief Road is, can we have some resource just to try and capture that cost to us? So he's reminded them, we didn't have a response the first time round, so I know he's reminded them probably 2 weeks ago. So since you mentioned it now, Councillor Pratt, I'll ask Hugh again.
Thank you. And I know I've got a meeting on Thursday morning with the leader of the council and various other people on this very issue. And I think I'm going to ask the leader if he could write to the minister, because I think it's completely unacceptable that this council is expected to pay for all this when it's one of the biggest engineering projects in Europe. And I think that it's not fair on your department. So if you're spending money on that, it's money you're not able to spend elsewhere.
I absolutely support that, and hopefully the report reflects what we're trying to do with that limited capacity. You know, I can't go to council and say we need 3 extra EHOs, 2 extra licensing officers. We're just not in that financial environment, are we? So we'd absolutely welcome that. And what we'll do prior to your meeting on Thursday, I'll send you the letter, just a reminder, plus Hugh's reminder. So there's a background to it, and that's going to the right person within Welsh Government that oversees that contract. So that's a bit more at weight for your meeting on Thursday.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Eason.
Yeah, just a brief question on the future. At the end of this year, the authority takes on responsibility for roadside parking. Will that come under your department in terms of licensing and regulation?
No, that'll come under Mandy Perrin and parking. So you've got a transport unit, haven't we, in terms of... So not all enforcement falls with us. You've got skip licensing on highways. There's a raft of other licensing that the authority issues. So in terms of car parking, that would be with Deb Jackson in terms of manager level, and I think Mandy Perrin, and she deals with car parking currently, isn't she? So they've got powers within our own car parks in terms of FPNs. That power will be extended to some of those car park people to enforce traffic wardens on the high street.
So they'll have statutory legislation to do that?
Yeah, I understand. I think it was due in December. Obviously, Mandy Perrin would be your best point of contact. I think that's delayed till April next year, but it's certainly coming our way. Yeah. And hopefully there won't be a gap. I mean, 2 of us are from Aberystwyth, and originally there's a gap between the council handing it over to the Ceredigion Council. It's absolute pandemonium for 12 months. It's a shame, really, isn't it? You'd like to think the public could be manage their own car parking, but people are parked on junctions, buses couldn't get around the place, and absolute people parking on pavements. Just disable access. So hopefully that's a smooth transition between Gwent Police and Warwickshire Council.
Thank you. Linda Guppy.
No, just to say, you know, the report was a pleasure to read and very easily read with loads and loads of information. I'm just willing to take it back to all your managers to thank all working within all the departments, because there's not that many of you, but the work is vast. Thank you.
Yeah, well, Linda's just stolen what I was going to say at the end of this, David, but thank you very much for the report. Thank you, Linda, once more for your expertise. And could you pass on our thanks as well to Taylor, please, and to Samantha. Anyway, thank you all very much for your attendance. It's been a good meeting, I think, and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.